Sir, I advise you to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
But I haven't done anything. Why am I being detained?
Hands are secured. Stay exactly where you are. All right. I'm not resisting. The man said calmly. I'm an FBI agent. Special Agent Jordan Webb. My credentials are in my jacket. Don't reach for anything. Eyes forward. Jordan Webb froze exactly where he stood. Hands open. Fingers spread. Doing everything his training had drilled into his muscle memory over 9 years with the FBI. Comply? Don't argue. Don't escalate. Identify yourself clearly. Just 30 seconds earlier, he'd been nothing more than a man walking through downtown Phoenix. Coffee in one hand, phone in the other, thinking about whether he could still catch the 6 p.m. flight back to Minneapolis. He'd been mentally running through his case notes, then his daughter's soccer game, then dinner plans, ordinary thoughts, ordinary life. And then, without warning, everything snapped. Voices came fast and loud. Overlapping. Contradictory. Don't move. Hands up. Stay still. Before Jordan could even fully process what was happening, his arms were grabbed and twisted behind his back. Cold metal cuffs clicked shut around his wrists, tighter than necessary. Pedestrians slowed. Someone gasped. Phones came out. I'm not resisting, Jordan said again, his voice steady but firm. This is a mistake. I'm FBI. Special Agent Jordan Webb. Please check my ID. No one answered. 4 federal officers in tactical vests stood around him in a tight circle. Weapons visible. Posture aggressive. They weren't listening. They weren't asking questions. They were already acting as if the decision had been made. Jordan felt it then that familiar. Sinking realization black agents talk about in quiet conversations after work. The one no training manual ever addresses. The badge didn't matter yet. The credentials didn't matter yet. The only thing that mattered was how he looked. And as the crowd grew and the officers tightened their grip, Jordan understood something chilling. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the moment everything he believed about protection, authority, and belonging was about to be tested on camera, in public, and in the worst possible way, 3 minutes earlier. None of this had existed. Across the street, inside an unmarked vehicle idling in the Phoenix heat, a federal surveillance team had just radioed in a description of a person they believed was their target. Black male, mid-30s, athletic build, dark jacket. That was it. No name. No photo confirmation. No distinctive features. Just enough to trigger instinct. Lead agent Kevin Strand heard the description and looked up from his dashboard screen. His body camera was already rolling. Years of enforcement had trained him to move fast when an opportunity appeared and to trust his gut when a suspect matched a pattern he'd learned to recognize. Then he saw Jordan Webb, walking calmly down the sidewalk, coffee in hand, phone in the other, not running, not looking over his shoulder, not doing anything that resembled flight, but the description matched. Strand didn't slow down to check the surveillance photo again. He didn't question why a wanted federal fugitive would stroll through one of the busiest downtown streets at lunchtime, dressed in business casual, surrounded by witnesses. He didn't notice Jordan wasn't carrying the backpack their actual target was reported to have. He saw a black man in the right age range, in the right area, wearing the right jacket, and that was enough. Stop right there. Hands where I can see them. The authority in Strand's voice carried expectation, the kind built on hundreds of past encounters where compliance came instantly and questions came later. He expected fear, confusion, Submission. What he didn't expect was calm. Jordan stopped immediately, turning slowly. Hands visible. His FBI training kicking in automatically. He scanned the officers. Their vests. Their patches. Their positioning. Federal agents. Not local police. That realization landed hard. This wasn't random. This is a mistake. Jordan said evenly, "I'm FBI. Special Agent Jordan Webb." But Strand wasn't hearing that. In his mind, the story was already written, and everything Jordan did next, every movement, every word would be interpreted through that lens. Because once assumption takes hold, evidence doesn't matter, and the situation was already moving toward a point of no return. Jordan's mind was moving faster than his body. Federal agents. Tactical vests. Downtown. Midday. None of it lined up with how this should be unfolding. He kept his hands raised. Fingers spread. Shoulders relaxed, the posture he'd used hundreds of times while approaching nervous officers during joint operations. The posture that said, "I'm not a threat without needing words. I'm not resisting." He said again. Steady. Professional. "I'm a federal agent. FBI Minneapolis Field Office. My credentials are in my inside left jacket pocket." The words were precise. Deliberate. Exactly how he'd been trained to identify himself. But across from him, Kevin Strand felt something else taking over. Adrenaline drowned out training. The presence of witnesses sharpened the moment instead of slowing it down. In Strand's head, this was no longer about verification, it was about control. "Put the coffee down," Strand ordered. "Get on the ground. Now." Jordan hesitated, not in defiance, but in calculation. Dropping the coffee meant moving his hand. Getting on the ground meant sudden motion. Every instinct screamed that the wrong move could make this worse. "This is a mistake," he said. Calm but firmer now. "Let me show you my ID." He narrated the movement the way agents are taught to do around armed officers. "I'm going to move my left hand slowly toward my jacket. Inside pocket. You can see everything." His hand moved inches. Slow. Controlled. Then, a voice cut through the air like a gunshot. "He's reaching." The shout came from Jordan's right. Sharp with fear and certainty. Fear fed by assumption. Certainty built on nothing more than expectation. Everything collapsed into chaos. The officers didn't hear the words slow or ID anymore. They saw motion and filled in the rest themselves. Years of bias, pressure, and conditioning slammed into one irreversible conclusion. Threat. In that split second between reason and reaction, a decision was made, and there would be no taking it back. Jordan never finished the movement. He never got close to his jacket. The moment the word reaching left that agent's mouth, the decision was made for everyone. A body slammed into Jordan's right side with the force of a linebacker breaking through a line. His feet left the ground. The world tilted. Then everything went white. His head hit the pavement hard enough to drive the air out of his lungs in a violent rush. Pain exploded behind his eyes as his face scraped across concrete that had been baking under the Arizona sun all morning. The coffee cup flew. Brown liquid arced through the air, splashing across a parked car, soaking into the sidewalk, staining the scene in a way no editor would ever need to exaggerate. His sandwich skidded away, crushed under a boot. Cellophane tearing as it disappeared under a parking meter. Before Jordan could even inhale, weight crashed down on him. A knee slammed between his shoulder blades, pinning him chest first into the ground. Another hand shoved his head sideways, pressing his cheek into pavement so hot it burned his skin. He tasted dust and blood. "Stop resisting," someone yelled. Jordan wasn't resisting. He tried to speak. But the pressure on his back made it hard to breathe. His ribs screamed. His shoulder wrenched violently as someone yanked his arm behind him. Twisting past its natural range, something popped. Pain shot down his arm and into his neck like electricity. "I'm FBI," Jordan shouted. His voice strained. "Federal agent, check my jacket." No one listened. More weight piled on. Another knee. Another grip. A practiced choreography of force, designed for suspects who fight, now being used on a man who had done everything right. Body cameras captured it all. The tackle. The pile-on. The commands that didn't match the reality. Pedestrians shouted from the sidewalk. Phones recorded from every angle. Traffic slowed as horns blared in the background. Jordan's training screamed at him to go limp. So he did. He stopped moving. Stopped speaking. Focused on breathing. On surviving. On keeping his head turned just enough so his face wouldn't be crushed further into the ground. And as the handcuffs snapped shut, metal biting deep into his wrists, Jordan understood something with terrifying clarity. This was no longer about a stop. This was about power. And power had decided he was the enemy. Every second of what happened next was captured. Not by one camera. By four. Kevin Strand's body camera recorded Jordan's back pressed into the pavement. His own knee planted where another agent's had just been. The footage shook slightly with Strand's breathing. Heavy and fast. Adrenaline still pumping. To Jordan's right, Agent Riley's camera caught the side-angled Jordan's arm twisted unnaturally behind him. His shoulder straining against the grip. His fingers spread wide and empty. No weapon. No resistance. Just compliance. Agent Patel's camera showed Jordan's face. His cheek scraped raw against the concrete. His jaw clenched tight against pain and panic. His eyes squeezed shut. Not in defiance, but in concentration, focusing on breathing while someone else decided his fate. And from behind them all, Agent Diaz's camera captured the full picture. 4 federal officers, kneeling on one man in the middle of downtown Phoenix at lunchtime. The crowd grew. A woman in a business suit stopped dead in her tracks. One hand flying to her mouth. A teenager raised his phone and started filming, narrating under his breath like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Someone shouted, "He's not doing anything." No one answered. "Stop resisting," Strand yelled again. Jordan didn't move. His hands were cuffed now. Metal biting deep into his wrists. Ratcheted tighter than necessary. The kind of tight that leaves marks. The kind that cuts circulation. The kind that doesn't happen by accident. "I'm a federal agent," Jordan said through clenched teeth. "FBI. Special Agent Jordan Webb." The words were clear, calm, unmistakable, and the cameras caught every single one of them. They caught the silence that followed, not the silence of confusion, but the silence of officers who had already committed to a version of events they didn't want challenged. They caught the truth, forming in real time, frame by frame, and they caught the moment when that truth became impossible to ignore. "What's your name?" Strand demanded. His voice still sharp, still locked in that command mode that assumes obedience. Jordan swallowed against the pain in his throat. "Special Agent Jordan Webb," he said quietly now. Every word measured. "FBI. Minneapolis Field Office. Badge number 7739. My credentials are in my inside left jacket pocket." There was something different in his tone this time. Not pleading. Not explaining. Stating fact. Strand hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but enough for the cameras to catch it. "Search him," Strand said. Agent Riley moved in, his body camera recording hands patting down Jordan's jacket. Fabric rustled. Pockets were checked. The inside left pocket was exactly where Jordan said it would be. Riley's hand came out holding a black leather credential case. He froze. The FBI seal was embossed in gold on the front. Unmistakable even at a glance. Riley opened it. And for the first time since this started, the world slowed down. Jordan's photo stared back at them. The same face pressed against the pavement. The same name. The same badge number. Valid. Official. Real. Riley's expression drained of color. "Oh shit," he whispered. The words barely made it past his lips. But the microphones picked them up anyway. Strand snatched the credentials from his hand. His body camera recording every frame as he flipped them open. Turned them over. Held them up to the light, like he might find a flaw. There wasn't one. "He's FBI," Strand said, his voice suddenly hollow. For several long seconds, no one moved. 4 federal officers knelt around a man they had just tackled. Cuffed. And pinned to the ground, a fellow agent surrounded by witnesses. All of it preserved on camera. The sound of traffic filled the silence. Phones kept recording. Jordan opened his eyes. "Get off me," he said, his voice low and controlled. "Get these cuffs off. Now." And in that moment, the power in the situation shifted completely. They moved fast after that. Too fast. Hands that had been crushing Jordan into the pavement moments earlier now scrambled to get away from him. Like contact itself had become dangerous. A key rattled. The cuffs came off with a sharp metallic click that echoed louder than it should have. Jordan pushed himself up slowly. Every movement deliberate. Every breath a reminder of what they'd done to him. His shoulders screamed as he rose. His wrists burned where the cuffs had bitten deep. His suit jacket hung torn at the shoulder seam. His white shirt smeared with coffee and dirt. He stood there on the sidewalk, breathing hard. Eyes locked on Strand. "Step back," Jordan said quietly. Strand instinctively reached out. Like he might help steady him. Like this could be smoothed over between professionals. Jordan raised a hand. "Don't," he said. "Don't touch me." The crowd had fully closed in now. 30 people at least. Phones everywhere. A low murmur of disbelief rippling through them. "You had no right," someone shouted. A woman in a blazer pushed forward, her hands shaking as she held up her phone. "I recorded everything," she said, her voice tight with anger. "From before you touched him." Jordan nodded once, forcing his breathing under control. "Please don't delete it," he said. "I'll need that." She nodded back immediately. "You'll have it. All of it." Strand cleared his throat. "Let me explain." "No." Jordan cut in. His voice wasn't loud, but it stopped everything. "You don't explain. You call your supervisor, and then you call their supervisor." Strand hesitated, the worst possible move. "I'm the supervising agent on this operation." The words landed like a mistake. Jordan's jaw tightened. "Then get me someone above you. Because what you just did is assault, false arrest, deprivation of civil rights under color of law." He glanced around at the cameras, the witnesses, the still-running body cams, and every second of it is documented. No one argued. For the first time since this started, the officers looked small, and Jordan understood something with absolute clarity. The stop was over, but the consequences were just beginning. Jordan's phone vibrated in his pocket before the officers had even finished stepping back. It was Minneapolis. Assistant Special Agent in Charge Patricia Reynolds didn't waste time on greetings. She didn't ask how he was feeling. She didn't need to. "Tell me exactly what happened," she said. Jordan gave her the facts. Short. Precise. controlled, the way agents are trained to speak when everything is about to explode. By the time he finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line, followed by language that would never make it into any official report. Do not say another word to them. Reynolds said, document everything. Photos of your injuries, names of witnesses, badge numbers, and get to the Phoenix FBI field office immediately. I'm calling their SAC right now. Within 20 minutes, a black FBI SUV pulled up to the curb. 2 agents stepped out. Senior Agent Sarah Martinez took one look at Jordan's torn suit, scraped face, and bruised wrists, and her expression hardened instantly. Agent Tom Chen didn't bother hiding his reaction. You tackled one of ours, Martinez asked, her voice dangerously calm. Strand opened his mouth. Chen cut him off. No, he said. Don't explain. We'll get the footage. The body cameras were still running. No one had thought to turn them off. Jordan was guided into the SUV, the door closing behind him with a dull finality. As they pulled away, he looked back through the window at the officers still standing on the sidewalk, surrounded by witnesses, cameras, and the weight of what they'd done. At the Phoenix FBI field office, medics documented everything. The shoulder strain, the bruised ribs, the abrasions on his face, the clear, excessive handcuff marks on his wrists. Photos were taken, reports were written, calls were made. And quietly, without press releases or public statements, the machinery of federal accountability began to turn. Because when one federal agency assaults another's agent, this isn't just misconduct. It's a crisis. And the footage made sure there would be no burying it. The first call from the Department of Justice came 3 months later. Not an apology. Not an admission. An offer. $50,000. It arrived, wrapped in careful language, no admission of wrongdoing. Good faith actions. Regrettable misunderstanding. A standard move. A number designed not to compensate, but to make the problem disappear quietly. Jordan didn't even hear about it at first. His attorney, Marcus Webb, read the offer once, exhaled through his nose, and rejected it without discussion. A single sentence sent back through official channels, "See you in court." The DOJ tried again. $200,000. Still quiet. Still conditional. Still insulting. By then, the case file had grown thick. 4 synchronized body camera videos. Civilian footage from 6 witnesses. Medical records documenting injuries consistent with excessive force. Internal FBI memoranda condemning the incident in language rarely used against another federal agency. The government's defense followed a familiar script. The officers had reasonable suspicion. The description matched. The force was justified under rapidly evolving circumstances. They acted in good faith. Marcus Webb dismantled it piece by piece. Reasonable suspicion, he said, doesn't mean black man in the vicinity. Good faith doesn't excuse ignoring identity. Compliance and clear verbal identification. And no evolving circumstance justifies tackling a cooperative federal agent in public. The lawsuit was filed in federal court. Special Agent Jordan Webb versus the United States of America. Named defendants followed. Names that couldn't hide behind badges anymore. Fourth Amendment violations. Excessive force. False arrest. Deprivation of civil rights under color of law. Once the complaint was public, there was no quiet resolution left. This was no longer a mistake. It was a test of accountability, of credibility, and of whether the system would protect itself or finally confront what it had done. And the court date was set. 18 months after the sidewalk in Phoenix, the courtroom was full, not just with lawyers and reporters, but with law enforcement. Agents from multiple agencies filled the benches. Some wore quiet symbols of support for Jordan. Others sat stiff and silent, arms crossed, watching their own profession on trial. The divide was visible, uncomfortable. On the second day, the body camera footage was played. All 4 angles. Synchronized. No commentary. The screens showed Jordan stopping immediately. Hands visible. Voice calm. Credentials explained again and again. Then the shout. Then the tackle. Then the pile-on. You could hear the impact through the speakers. The sound of a body hitting concrete hard enough to suck the air out of the room. Several jurors flinched. One woman pressed her lips together, blinking fast. Another shook her head slowly, like she already knew where this was going. When the footage ended, the courtroom stayed silent longer than the judge expected. Jordan took the stand the next morning. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize anything. He spoke the way federal agents are trained to speak facts first. Emotion controlled. He explained his training at Quantico, his years in the field, how he'd approached the officers exactly the way he'd taught rookies to approach nervous law enforcement: slow, deliberate, transparent. I knew resistance would make it worse, he said. So I complied. Then he said the sentence that shifted the room. I did everything right, and it still wasn't enough. On cross-examination, the defense tried to suggest confusion, stress, split-second decisions. Jordan didn't argue. I've made hundreds of arrests, he said calmly. I know what reasonable force looks like. This wasn't it. And the jury listened, because for the first time, this wasn't about a suspect. It was about credibility and whose version of reality could survive the truth. When Kevin Strand took the stand, the defense tried to frame him as experienced, cautious, professional. That narrative lasted less than 10 minutes. Marcus Webb didn't raise his voice. He didn't pace. He didn't need to. He walked Strand through his own actions, step by step, using Strand's own body camera footage as the guide. You never asked for identification before ordering him to the ground. Correct. Strand hesitated. That's correct. You never verified the surveillance photo before initiating contact. Another pause. No. You were told the suspect had a backpack. Yes. And Mr. Webb did not have a backpack. No. Webb let the silence stretch. So, what exactly made you decide this man was your suspect? Strand shifted in his chair. He matched the description. Webb nodded. A black man, in his 30s, wearing a dark jacket. The words hung in the air. That description, Webb continued evenly, would have matched hundreds of men in downtown Phoenix that afternoon. Wouldn't it? Strand didn't answer right away. Yes, he finally said. That was the moment the case cracked open. The jury leaned forward. Pens stopped moving. A woman in the front row crossed her arms tightly. Jow said. By the time Strand stepped down, the story the defense had tried to sell no longer existed. The jury deliberated for 5 days. 5 long days of replaying footage, rereading transcripts, arguing not about what happened, but about how much it mattered. Jordan waited in a quiet hotel room, working remotely, sleeping poorly, checking his phone too often. When the call finally came, his hands shook as he stood. The courtroom filled fast. The jury filed in, faces unreadable. The foreperson stood, and before a single word was spoken, Jordan knew this wasn't going to be a compromise. It was going to be a reckoning. The courtroom went silent as the foreperson began to read. We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Special Agent Jordan Webb, on all counts. Jordan closed his eyes, not in relief but in exhaustion. Months of pain, anger, and disbelief crashed together in a single moment of validation. Around him, he heard sharp inhales, a muffled sob. Someone whispered, "Finally." The damages phase took another week. Experts testified about Jordan's injuries, about the nightmares, the hypervigilance, the erosion of trust that comes when even your own badge can't keep you safe. The jury listened closely. When they returned for the final time, the silence felt heavier than before. $6.3 million in compensatory damages. $4.9 million in punitive damages. A total of $11.2 million. The largest civil rights verdict against federal officers in Arizona history. Kevin Strand was terminated 3 days later. Another agent resigned before disciplinary hearings began. The remaining officers were reassigned, their field careers effectively over. The Department of Justice issued a carefully worded statement expressing disappointment, while affirming respect for the judicial process. No apology, no admission, just paperwork. Jordan retired from the FBI 2 years later, earlier than planned, but with clarity. He now trains law enforcement agencies on constitutional policing and de-escalation, using the footage of his own assault as a teaching tool, a reminder of what happens when assumptions replace verification. Because this case was never just about a stop gone wrong. It was about a system that saw skin color before credentials, force before facts, power before accountability. And it proved something important. Justice doesn't arrive on its own. It only shows up when people force the truth into the light, frame by frame, oath by oath, verdict by verdict. If you believe badges should protect everyone equally, and that accountability matters even when the people who broke the law wear the same uniform as the victim, subscribe. Because sometimes the greatest threat isn't the criminal in front of you. It's the prejudice behind the badge.